This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's November 7th, 2024. On this day in 1944, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected to a record fourth term. And it was on this day in 1972 that Richard Nixon won his re-election to the White House. Both won landslide victories in those elections, but neither of those men would finish those terms. FDR died about 5 months later in April 1945, and Nixon resigned in 1974 amid the Watergate scandal. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Given recent history in Tennessee, the fact that the state's two largest cities passed major referendums this week may have you on the alert to see how the state will respond. After all, in recent years, the state legislature has passed a whole bunch of measures that essentially tell Nashville and Memphis, you want to do your own thing? Well, don't. There were the laws to put the state in charge of who sits on powerful local boards, the ban on police oversight groups with investigative power, the reason the State Historical Commission has the right to sign off on moving or changing pretty much anything related to the past is because state leaders didn't like it when Memphis moved a statue out of a city park. So what's going to happen now that Nashville voters chose to invest heavily in public transit and Memphis citizens made it clear they want tighter gun controls? Well, in a lot of ways, the referendums that passed this week show that local leaders in both cities have learned some important lessons about dealing with the state. Let's take the gun measure first. The three-part referendum, which passed overwhelmingly, calls for a prohibition on assault rifles, a ban on carrying a handgun without a permit, and the creation of what are known as extreme risk orders of protection. That's a legal mechanism for removing someone's guns if they're deemed to be a risk to themselves or others. Now, these are local matters which would only affect areas within the city of Memphis. And they fly in the face of recent state legislative action, or inaction. Bills dealing with protection orders or cutting down on the types of firearms allowed in the state have been introduced to the General Assembly, but those are the kinds of things that just sort of get pushed around, so little or no action is taken. And as for carry permits, well, those used to be required across the state, but a few years ago, the legislature voted in favor of what they called constitutional carry. In other words, the idea that the constitutional right to bear arms is the only permit necessary. So anyone who's legally eligible to own a gun can carry that weapon without any kind of formal permitting process. In August, after the Memphis City Council moved to put the gun control measure to voters, state legislative leaders indicated they saw the referendum as an attempt to circumvent state laws. Both House Speaker Cameron Sexton and Senate Speaker Randy McNally took that moment to say that sidestepping the state has a consequence. They suggested the state could withhold the city's share of state sales tax. After that, the Shelby County Election Commission attempted to block the referendum from this week's ballot, but a judge ruled in favor of putting the question to voters. But here's the thing. Tennessee's Republican leadership gave Memphis Democrats a roadmap for how to craft a measure that's at odds with a higher level of government. Remember how this state adopted an abortion ban back when Roe v. Wade made enacting that kind of law impossible? It was called a trigger law, meaning it was only triggered when things changed at the federal level. The point was to have it ready and waiting in the wings, just in case. And Memphis leaders say their referendum was written to work the same way. Those gun limits will only go into effect if certain state laws are changed. As for Nashville and transit, well, this city learned an important lesson just over a decade ago when former Mayor Carl Dean made his huge push for transit reform. Like the measure that passed this week, Dean called for a big expansion and modernization of the city's bus system with a heavy emphasis on bus rapid transit, or BRT. But his plan needed state approval and federal funding, and that opened the door for state leaders to hit the brakes. Back in 2013, the State Department of Transportation jumped in immediately to cast doubts on the viability of BRT. And the agency made it clear Nashville will get no help from the state in securing federal transit funding. Dean kept pushing for about a year and a half, but ultimately the state legislature passed a bill that essentially outlawed the design of the Nashville plan at that time. Now, this time around, Mayor Freddie O'Connell specifically crafted a plan that needs as little state involvement as possible. The new designs avoid the points that were outlawed during the Dean era, and the funding mechanism is local. The money comes from a local sales tax hike, well within the bounds of what state tax law allows. And by raising that money in-house, so to speak, the city will most likely unlock federal funds directly without needing the state to act as a go-between. In just a few minutes, we'll dig in deeper to the transit referendum and what's next now that it's passed. That's coming up after the newscast.
We know that local government isn't the only part of your life.
Like the mayor, I know that city government isn't the only thing you're concerned with.
We are still struggling to find affordable housing.
They're taking over this bus stop.
That's one of the unique challenges with my business.
I'm WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams. I'm working to break down topics like transit, housing, and local government to make sure that when you are thinking about Metro, you're getting the full story. Follow my latest stories at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Tennessee voters turned out at almost the same record numbers they did in 2020. The Secretary of State's office says over 3 million Tennesseans cast a ballot. That's down less than 1% compared to the 2020 turnout. Compared with 4 years ago, early voter turnout was down slightly. But voters who showed up on Election Day nearly made up for that gap. Election Day turnout almost matched the last pre-pandemic election in 2016. In Davidson County, turnout was down by about 13%. GOP success in this election included a slate of wins in the Tennessee legislature. That's where Democrats had hoped to chip away at the Republican supermajority in some closely watched contests. But Holly McCall, editor of the Tennessee Lookout, tells our Daily Show This Is Nashville that there was no such groundswell.
You know, Democrats had thought they could flip up to 4 seats, but at a minimum 2, and they ended up not flipping any. And so, you know, Democrats in Tennessee like to say that Tennessee is not a red state. It's a non-voting state. It is true that we have the lowest voter turnout in the country, but Tennessee is a red state. And even when Democrats were in power years ago, it was still a conservative state.
McCall says there were essentially no Tennessee surprises on Tuesday. Donald Trump won the state by a wider margin than before, with 64%, and Republican incumbents easily held all of their congressional seats. Lower Broadway attracts partygoers just about every night of the year. WPLN's Rose Gilbert reports that on election night, it became a political playground for conservative voters from across the nation.
USA! USA! Kid Rock's Big Ass Honky Tonk hosted an election night watch party / Fox News taping, featuring cameos from Tommy Lahren and Kid Rock himself. The bar was packed with people sporting Make America Great Again caps, American flag apparel, and at least one pair of those $400 golden Trump sneakers. Many were not from Nashville.
I'm actually from Georgia, so I came up here.
I now reside in New Jersey.
Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Connecticut.
From Los Banos, California.
Some had traveled specifically to attend this event. Others were here for a birthday or anniversary trip and were looking to engage in some political revelry. There were locals there as well. Emily Brantley lives in West Nashville. She attended wearing a Rainbow Pride Trump tank top.
This is meant to confuse and confound and annoy, quite frankly. So
it's an annoyance to me to back up for your politics, do you feel?
No, I don't.
Brantley says she decided to come to Broadway to people watch while waiting for the election results.
I'm here for the chaos, honestly. I'm here for Election Mania 2024. I am here to fan the flames of BS, you know what I mean?
Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
Well, to call it a landslide would be an understatement. Nolensville voters overwhelmingly approved the sale of wine in grocery stores this week. News Channel 5 reports the measure passed with 90% approval. Both Publix and Kroger have indicated plans to open stores in the swiftly growing Williamson County community. In Tennessee, alcohol sales are allowed only if local voters choose to allow it via referendum. The measures are generally only added to ballots when communities grow large enough to draw retailers interested in selling booze. The anticipated relocation of a high-profile church, which meets in a tent in Wilson County, has hit a snag. The Tennessean reports Global Vision Bible Church was not able to close on a sale to move into a church building in Lebanon. A different congregation, Love's Way Church, was looking to relocate and will keep its property for sale. Global Vision's pastor, Greg Locke, has drawn widespread attention for his right-wing political stances and vaccine conspiracy theories. The tent-based church also has been embattled with neighbors over noise and traffic complaints, as well as unpermitted construction that drew the scrutiny of county planners. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Nashville's voters approved the city's transit referendum in a decisive vote, with more than 2/3 of voters casting ballots in favor. The referendum asked voters to approve a half-cent sales tax increase to fund a $3 billion transit proposal. It will add major transit upgrades like a bus rapid transit network, miles of new sidewalks, updated traffic signals, and 24/7 bus service. WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams has been covering the referendum. Afternoon host LaTonya Turner spoke with her about what comes next.
So now that this referendum has been approved, what are the next steps, and how soon will Nashvillians actually see any changes?
Yeah, so it's important to keep in mind that this is a 15-year plan. Many of the large-scale projects, like dedicated transit lanes along major corridors, could take years, if not decades, to accomplish. In the short term, Nashvillians can expect to see that sales tax bump in February. That means Metro will begin receiving those dollars in April, and within the next year, some sidewalks and signals will begin to be added around Nashville. There will also be some bus service improvements, although WeGo is not yet in a position to increase bus service to 24/7. That remains the goal, and WeGo will start adding to its fleet and hiring more drivers to inch toward that round-the-clock promise.
Okay, so WeGo will start hiring more staff. Are there any other new positions that will be needed as this plan moves forward, or any other departments that will be established?
Yeah, so the mayor announced today that they will be creating a new position in the mayor's office. It's the Chief Program Officer for Choose How You Move. The job posting is going live today, and they will play a crucial role in overseeing this plan's implementation. That means working with metro departments, the community, and private partners. Those private partners are another player in the transit plan. Over the next few weeks, Metro Finance and the procurement team will begin holding information sessions for industry partners that want to be a part of the execution.
Okay, so the referendum implements a sales tax surcharge that's supposed to bring in about $100 million a year. But the administration has said that they hope to access over $1 billion in federal funds to support the program. So how is that being impacted by the election of Donald Trump?
So the bulk of those funds are authorized under President Joe Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, which the administration always knew would be available only through 2026. So Mayor O'Connell said today that he is confident in the ability to access those dollars. However, people around former President Donald Trump have proposed rolling back the Inflation Reduction Act, and some conservatives have suggested eliminating elements of the Federal Transit Administration. Those are pretty major things that would have an impact on what money is available to Nashville for transit. O'Connell said in this situation, they maybe would have to reassess some elements of the plan.
So there's obviously more reporting to come, Cindy. So we will look forward to your future reports on this transit referendum.
That was Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams speaking with WPLN's afternoon host, LaTonya Turner. To learn more about Nashville's transit referendum and what it will entail, visit WPLN.org/transit. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who left a thumbs up, a review, 5 stars in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up tomorrow.